Following Big Ten and Team Media Days, one thing is clear. This Oregon team is confident. Saturday has the potential to bring some big-time recruiting fireworks. Can the Ducks seal the deal? I've got some August 2nd commitment predictions. Plus, fall camp position previews for the linebackers and offensive line. You can feel the electricity on this edition of That Show Out West.
This place has everything. In fact, the grass is damn green in Eugene.
That performance deserves a holy wallawa.
It's a feeling you cannot explain.
This place is louder than any other venue in the Big Ten.
This program is staged to compete and to win championships.
Welcome to the Big Ten, Oregon.
Welcome to That Show Out West for That Team Out West. I'm Ted LaRue. Now, want to say apologies for the delay to kick things off right away. This was originally supposed to be a Tuesday show. Of course, today is Wednesday. We've had some big-time severe weather, some big-time thunderstorms rolling through here in TSOW HQ country. So the power has actually been out the last couple of nights, so that's why I haven't been able to get a show up until now. But hey, I am ready, I am here, and we are talking ball. We're actually going to be having a show on Friday, so we're going to have a Wednesday and a Friday. I don't think I've ever had those two shows that close together, but you're getting a double dip. 2 shows in 3 days if everything goes according to plan and we have no more thunderstorms rolling through here as well. I'm excited about having these couple of shows later in the week. You know what else I'm excited for? And maybe it deserves like a mini Holy Wallawa. I'm excited for what's going to go down exactly 1 month from today. Today, it is July 30th, 2025. On August 30th, 2025, Oregon is going to kick off the 2025 season against the Montana State Bobcats. Folks, the countdown, the days, that number is getting smaller. It is getting smaller, and thus my excitement level is raising and raising and raising as well. I cannot wait, and we are 1 month away until the live debut of that post-game show out west for the regular season. Live phone calls and interaction shortly after the Bobcats and the Ducks wrap up. Man, my heart is beating. My heart is beating. I'm ready to get into some ball talk now. And we begin said ball talk on the Oregon recruiting trail. Now, full disclaimer, I am very well aware this is old news. I mean, this happened almost a week ago. This was 6 days ago. But last week, I was wrapping up some things elsewhere, doing some other projects, kind of getting some other things done that I really needed to get done. So as I said, on multiple TSOW social media platforms, there was going to be no show last week. And then naturally, you get this type of big news when I'm not doing a show and I'm doing other things. But, you know, sometimes that's the way the cookie crumbles. But whether it's old news or whether it's new news, I am always happy to celebrate a Holy Wallawa commitment, and that being from 4-star or 5-star wide receiver, depending on what service you look at, Kesean Bowman out of the 2027 class. Now, this kind of came out of left field for a lot of people. Now, you heard that Bowman was offered by Oregon fairly recently, but certainly maybe wasn't expecting a commitment this early in the process. And just like any 2027 commitment, the challenge is going to be to hold on to that commitment when eventually he puts pen to paper a couple of Decembers from now. Now, according to 24/7 Sports, he is a composite 5-star, the number 36 overall player in the country, number 6 wide receiver. You flip over to the Rivals industry, he is a 4-star, number 51 overall player, and the number 10 wide receiver in the country. Now, recently, he took an unofficial visit to Oregon on May 31st, but you look at the weeks before, you look at the weeks after, there were certainly some other programs mixed in there as well. Little bit on the smaller side. Rivals has him at 160 pounds. 24/7 has him at 174 pounds, but I have good news. I bear good news for all of you. Troy Franklin was 170 pounds coming out of high school. Tez Johnson, although kind of really small, but very quick as well. He was 155 pounds at the combine. And when I turn on the tape of Kesean Bowman, kind of like Troy Franklin, he's got that top end speed. Like his highlight tape is like 10, 11 minutes long, something like that. And I'd probably say like a solid like 6 to 7 minutes of it is him. Like his team just telling him, okay, just run. Just run. We're going to throw it deep. Go Ball City. And they really show his speed on tape. That's the big thing that certainly tops out. He is a big-time deep threat going down the field, and you certainly love to see that. Now, Oregon really recruits a lot of playmakers, a lot of guys that can catch the ball and create in space, and I think Kesean Bowman will he'll get better at that, and I think he's really good right now, but I think he's got another step, I think, to be able to take possibly in that department, but he's got a really well-rounded tape, considering that he's got a couple of more years left at the high school level there in Tennessee, at Brentwood Academy in Brentwood, Tennessee. Even when you look at his size and he kind of goes up in those jump ball situations, he does a really good job timing his jump and kind of working off some of these contested defenders that he's going up against. So that's kind of a good sign, even kind of where he's at with his body frame right now. He's got great one move ability. Like he puts his foot in the ground, great change of direction. Whether he's coming back and stopping on a route, he's coming back to find the football, whether he's cutting, double moving, whatever it is. I mean, he has a great ability to be able to change direction. And like the big thing that really stood out to me that maybe not everybody will cover when they talk about Kesean Bowman or have covered certainly by now, his motor and his drive really stands out to me, especially kind of towards the end of his highlight film, because the first part of his film is very much the speed and the deep threat abilities on display. And he has a really good tracking ability of some of those deep balls as well that I think is really advanced. But he's really hard to bring down. Okay, you catch the ball and he's running in the open field. A lot of times it takes a couple of guys to bring him down. And then, this is certainly not something everybody's going to be talking about, he's got a really high motor when it comes to perimeter blocking. Like he is staying on blocks and he is driving people into the ground. And that's not something you see a lot of on these high school tapes. A lot of people say, hey, what do you do when you catch the ball in the open field? Can you run, get over the top? Can you run past the defense? All of that. I see a lot of well-rounded game, but that motor and that drive, that's like stuff that can't be taught. You can't teach that. A lot of times when you get these 4-star and 5-star wide receivers, you know, maybe that's not something, man, I'm so much better than all these guys, and maybe they don't have that same energy and motivation when it comes to especially the perimeter blocking, but you certainly see that. And like, you want to be able to have those skills, those unteachable skills that I kind of laid out just now. And I think he certainly got that with his motor. So this is a big time pickup. And like, you can talk about his skill set all you want, but really the first thing that popped into my mind with him was Ross Douglas. Just get him the old chef's hat. Get him the utensils, get him the food, get him the ingredients, okay? Because, yeah, we got to let him cook. We got to let Ross Douglas cook, and that's exactly what he was doing. I don't think there was really any doubt what Ross could do from a development standpoint. Like that 1 year at Syracuse, like all of those guys took a gigantic jump up in production. Okay, so I think from what's on a roster and what Ross getting the most out of his players, I really wasn't doubting that. And kind of what, you know, learning under the guys like Bill Belichick and others at the NFL level, I think one thing that a lot of Duck fans were very interested in knowing, was he going to be able to keep up that elite level recruiting chops that Junior Adams certainly had. And for those of you listening on podcasts, I'll kind of spell out what's on the graphic here on YouTube. This is a tweet I had. And since Ross Douglas has stepped onto campus, he's locked in commitments from Messiah Hampton, the number 104 player overall in the 26th class. How about Jalen Lott, number 57 overall in the 26th class? And now Kesean Bowman, the number 51 player in the 2027 class. Like, he is picking up exactly where Junior Adams left off. So you have the development piece with Ross that I think a lot of Duck fans are excited about, especially with all of the names in the room on this year's team. And now what he's doing on the recruiting trail, this is it's proving to be another fantastic Dan Lanning assistant coaching hire. And I will finish with this as it pertains to Ross right now. Getting and his recruiting ability, getting a 27 to buy in this early in his tenure, I think is very impressive, because you kind of look at Messiah. He was recruiting Messiah Hampton when he was the wide receivers coach at Syracuse. I think there was a decent amount of groundwork that was laid with Jalen Lott, but you got to give Ross a lot of credit, right? Because Texas was in that battle, USC was in that battle. You got to give Coach Douglas credit for certainly figuring that one out and getting a commitment over there. But having a kid to be able to see the buy-in and see the vision with Ross Douglas this early in the process, I think speaks to his ability. So he's got the development down. He's got the recruiting down. I'm so pumped at the future of the wide receiver room. When we talk about the golden age of Oregon wide receivers, it certainly seems like Ross Douglas is going to continue things in that trajectory in terms of future Oregon wide receiver rooms. We continue on down the Oregon recruiting trail, now looking into the future, but certainly the not too distant future. A lot of Duck fans have had this Saturday circled on their calendar for a long time. They have been looking forward to August 2nd as the potential explosive finale of the Summer of Dan, hoping, maybe looking forward to, some commitment fireworks this weekend. It is the commitment date of 4-star defensive back Davon Benjamin and 4-star defensive lineman Deuce Geralds. These are two big-time targets for the Ducks that they've had very high on their defensive board for a long time. These are two guys, according to various industry experts, where predictions are logged in favor of Oregon. So can the Ducks seal the deal? Let's dive right into it. And let's start with Davon Benjamin. In the inaugural Rivals 300 rankings that came out about a month ago, Davon Benjamin rose up big time, the number 22 overall player, and they had him as the number 1 corner in that class, but he can also play the safety position. He is a very versatile player coming out of Oaks Christian High School there in Southern California. Oregon's only West Coast competition within the final 5 schools for Davon Benjamin is Washington. So I think they feel like they're in a really good spot, especially with competing against schools out on the West Coast with no USC involved. Who are they going up against? They're going up against Michigan, the aforementioned Washington Huskies, the North Carolina Tar Heels, and the Texas Longhorns. We know the Horns have been throwing around some cash. Oregon, like I said, to open this thing up when I talked about both of these guys, they have been the prediction for a while. And for a while really means a lot for a guy like Benjamin. Since the spring, that's when some of these predictions were logged. So this staff, I think, has put a lot of resources into this recruitment. I think they've certainly valued this recruitment. And kind of the more I watch from Davon Benjamin, the more I can get excited. And I think he can just play any position in the future in the secondary. I think he can play star, he can play corner, he can play safety, and he can play them all at a high level. As of late, Michigan has been making a pretty decent push. But in my personal opinion, what I've kind of read and kind of what I heard regarding this situation, I don't know if it's as serious of enough push to maybe put the Wolverines over the edge, considering how long Oregon has been in the pole position for a guy like Benjamin. All right, let's get to my prediction. You can probably see the writing on the wall with where I'm going with this one. I believe Davon Benjamin is going to commit to Oregon on Saturday, and I'm going to tell you why. Oregon, over the last 2 years, has been a little bit of a Death Star when it comes to defensive back recruiting, haven't they? Right? You're getting, 4 top 75 guys in the 25 class, and then in this class, getting someone like Jet Washington in there already. Devin Jackson certainly is really good in the top 150 as well. I think that this is the guy that they've wanted paired with Jet Washington for a long time as far as those really high caliber players. Now, I know that this 26 defensive back recruiting class might not be as good as the 25 group, but you put Jet Washington and Davon Benjamin certainly at the top of that thing. That would still be a pretty damn good secondary class, and Chris Hampton just keeps on doing it, and they keep doing what they're doing. I feel like Oregon's getting to a spot in the secondary where if they have a kid that they have their eye on and they really want what they've been able to prove with their vision in some of these recruiting pitches and kind of the results on the trail, they've been able to go seal the deal. So this is all about finishing strong for the Oregon Ducks to close this one out. What a big victory this would be for the Ducks if they can indeed come out on top on Saturday. Now, let's talk about the defensive line. Let's go more towards the line of scrimmage, and let's chat about Deuce Geralds, the 4-star defensive lineman coming out of Sewanee, Georgia, down there in the southeast. Oregon is up against Michigan, LSU, Ole Miss, and Ohio State. Now, about a month or so ago, around just after the 4th of July, I believe it was, Deuce Geralds set his commitment date. At that time, there was a good amount of smoke that a possible commitment could be coming. And I thought, like, when he announced his commitment date for August 2nd, I kind of thought to myself, well, he's creaking the door open. That kind of 4-week span seemed like last call for some big-time bag drops. Because at that time around when he set his commitment date, maybe it was a little bit afterwards, you started to see some of these predictions in favor of Oregon really start to go in. LSU has made a pretty significant push as of late. I think the Tigers are probably they are the biggest challenger right now to Oregon getting this commitment. I talked about how Michigan made the push for Davon Benjamin and be like, yeah, I don't think it's as significant to get over the top. I think LSU is really doing a lot, coming on strong to see if they can kind of flip this thing back in their direction. I mean, you kind of look at some of these connections, like he's an Ole Miss legacy, and there is an LSU family connection. His dad, Deuce Geralds' dad, played at Ole Miss from 2006 to 2010, and he's got family from Louisiana. So you got to think that the Tigers are really doing everything they can to kind of keep Deuce with the family down there in the Southeast. Prediction time for Deuce Geralds. Not one quack, but I think there are going to be 2 quacks on Saturday. Here comes Ted, the ultimate optimist, coming in from the top rope, right? Here's what I want to say with this. I think it's more of like Oregon feels like, dude, we need guys on the defensive line, okay? Like, they lost Ami Malawa on the inside. They lost Tamahini Tupoi on the inside. And I know, like, if you kind of watch Deuce Geralds, I mean, he's sitting there like 268, 270 pounds. So he's not maybe like that defensive tackle or nose tackle. He can play those positions, certainly. But he can kind of also play on the edge. He might project a little bit more as kind of a bigger edge guy, like a Jordan Berger or Mateo Uiagalelei, something like that as well. But I think that this is one, considering the way that the defensive line has gone this cycle for the Ducks, that they need to close on. And I think, like, kind of based on what the tea leaves I'm kind of reading over the last 4 to 6 weeks, it seems like Oregon is going to be able to finish the job, and that this is a priority, big time priority recruitment, certainly financially for them in this as well. So I feel pretty confident that the Ducks will seal the deal, although I think it's going to be a little bit closer down the stretch for somebody like Deuce Geralds. Oregon right now, as we speak, is sitting at 15 commitments. If you get these 2, it would get them up to 17. Remember last year, the Ducks signed 18 guys. So if they can get to that 17 mark and then they go into flip mode, that's exactly where they want to be. And I think they're sitting in a really good spot. It's been beat home to death. But this is an Oregon class that has the top average player rating in the entire country. Getting Benjamin, getting Deuce Geralds would certainly add to that. You know, over the last week, I've taken in a whole lot of interviews. I've taken in a whole lot of press conferences from Big Ten Media Days last week. Of course, earlier in the week on Monday, it was the Oregon Team Media Day in Eugene, and I've watched multiple minutes, maybe bordering on hours of all of this information and really trying to digest it in my brain. And I'm trying to come up with what are the big takeaways here and there. And I kind of think to myself, I'm like, there's one big takeaway out of all of this, and it really circles back to the beginning. It circles back to the beginning of Dan Lanning's press conference at Big Ten Media Days, when he says, we're doubling down. That's the theme for this season. We are doubling down on the process. We are doubling down on the structure. We're doubling down because it works. What we've been able to do, what we've been able to build, the proof is in the pudding, as Dan has said before. And when I hear him kind of say and really have this doubling down theme, and it really oozes confidence. This team, and then it kind of goes down to the players as well, how they've been able to talk about this team. There is not a lot of uncertainty. Okay, this is a team, I think, that knows how good they are this season. And you might not know it if you kind of listen to the national media, and they're saying, well, Oregon is losing. They've had the most NFL draft picks in their school's history. They're losing this guy. They're losing that guy. Josh Connerly goes off to the NFL. All of these things. But I think you kind of listen and kind of read between the lines, and your takeaways when you listen to these guys and some of the media interviews that we've had so far, okay, you lose a Heisman finalist quarterback, we feel great about our room. Okay, a guy like Dante Moore might have as high a ceiling as we've seen since maybe the likes of Justin Herbert, okay? You lose another running back to the NFL, Jordan James, another 1,200-yard rusher. We have maybe the deepest backfield that Oregon has had in a very long time. You lose Evan Stewart to injury. We're confident that guys are going to be able to make plays. Like Kenyon Sadiq was asked that question, and a reporter was asking, like, was there a moment where you guys got together and kind of banded together and say, hey, we all need to step up? And kind of looked around and says, no, we know what we are. We know how good we are. We know what all of these guys in this room can certainly do. You lose 4 starters on the offensive line. We love our size. We're bigger than ever. Up front, it's just every answer for all of these questions, and we know there are a good amount of questions for Duck football this year. Every question has an answer. And I feel like it's had a very confident answer during these media days, which kind of got me thinking and pondering a little bit. They're confident, so I'm confident. And here are maybe the 4 things that I'm most confident in when it comes to these 2025 Oregon Ducks. Let's start with number 1, and it's the coaching staff. Look, when you have as good of a year that the Ducks had last year, you go 12-0 during the regular season, you win the Big Ten championship in your first year in the league, and really the first year of the Super Power 2 version of the Big Ten Conference, and you have as much success as they did, and you lose all of the players that they did to the NFL, you might think, well, the coaches might go along with it. That wasn't the case. Will Stein is back. Tosh Lapoy is back, and there's a lot of position coaches. There is a ton of continuity on this coaching staff, and that is a big reason why I am confident that this coaching staff is going to be able to get the most out of these players this season. Like when you look at, they lost Junior Adams, okay, to the NFL, to the Dallas Cowboys, and Junior was a fantastic coach, but they replaced him with Ross Douglas, who had a receiving group that caught that was part of the biggest offense, the most productive offense in college football last season. And Mike Cavanaugh is one that you could maybe throw in there, an assistant offensive line coach. You know, I think then he goes to Oregon State, I think, to be the head offensive line coach. Like, it doesn't, those are the significant losses on this coaching staff. Like, these are guys that have recruited. You know, when we talk about these young players having to step up, these are the coaches, the position coaches, the coordinators, and of course, Dan. These are the guys that have recruited them. These are the guys that have developed them. And now these are the guys that are going to put them in a situation to be able to succeed. You know, when you get like a new coordinator, you know, at the very least, you're adjusting the scheme and maybe adjusting some terminology a little bit. And that's some of these position coaches, you kind of have to, okay, this guy recruited me and he was developing now. Now I have a different voice in the room. Now things are a little bit different, and that's something I have to adjust to. But now all of these young players are like, yeah, I know Tony Tuioti. I know Brian Michalowski. Okay, I know Alik Terry. All right, I know Rashad Samples. I know Chris Hampton. Like, I know all of these guys and what they can do, and we've built relationships. And I think that's important towards getting the most out of this team, especially the young talent on the roster. That's the big thing. Oregon, when we talk about the retention as far as the players are concerned, they've done a really good job. Dan has done a really good job at making this a coaching destination. And if you leave the Oregon Ducks coaching staff, it's going to be for a hell of an opportunity, right? So I think like Dan can actually be able to sell that a little bit, be like, hey, you know, this is a great place to be able to win some ball games and kind of elevate you to that next level as well. So this coaching staff gives me a lot of confidence that they're going to continue that upward trajectory that Oregon certainly has been able to go on. All right, let's kind of get to the players on the field. I'm really confident in the pass rush. I mean, when you look at all of the defense, I mean, there's going to be a lot of new players in the secondary. I know Betcher comes back in the linebacker room, and that's pretty good. You know, you lose a couple of NFL draft picks on the defensive line, and Amari and Bear will probably be really good, but we just don't know, right? We just don't know because they haven't been there yet. But when you look at this edge room, this defensive end room, this pass rush that we're looking at for Oregon, it's the only position group that is returning both of its starters from last season. Of course, Mateo Uiagalelei and Tatum Tuioti. Like, you could, like, when you talk about confidence in the pass rush, you could be like, oh, yeah, they got Mateo. They got one of the best pass rushers in the entire country. That alone might give me some confidence. But this is kind of piggybacking off of what I said with the coaching staff. Mateo, Tatum, Blake Purchase. I love Blake Purchase. Ashton Porter have all spent multiple years within the program. They have been recruited and they have been developed, okay, within this Oregon program, right? There's not transfers in here. Like, this is a model of, I think, what Dan wanted to get to, now entering his 4th year, where this is a group that has been an in-house. They have been Ducks since day one, and now it's time to really show on the field just how good that you can be. So I love the depth in this room. I didn't mention Elijah Rushing as well out there. Like, the depth is insane. I think that this is a group that can throw it. This is a defense that can throw out a lot of packages. I think they can throw out like a NASCAR package with 3 edge rushers. I think you can get creative with what you have at the second level. Like, Blake Purchase can play an outside linebacker type of spot. I think Ashton Porter could probably play that spot as well. Like, I cannot wait. This is probably the group that I have the most confidence in on the defensive side of the ball. Let's move over to the offensive side of the ball, and there's 2 here. First one, I'm going to go with the rushing attack. You kind of look around at the offense. Look, I think Dante Moore is going to be really good at the least, but we got to go out there and see it. Okay, in a battle right now with Austin Novosad. Offensive line got 4 new starters. Now, offensive line is kind of play into how I feel about the rushing attack. So I will say that. So maybe talking out of 2 sides of my mouth with that one. Wide receiver, you're kind of leaning on a true freshman and a lot of unknowns to really step up and rise to the occasion. But I kind of look at this rushing attack, and it's the deepest room I think that Oregon has had in a long time, and you got a lot of different skill sets. I mean, Rashad Sample said in the spring, how can we get the NCAA to get 2 footballs on the field, to get all of these guys touches out there? Look at what Mekhi Hughes has done as like a power running back. At the group of 6 type of level. I think, like, you look at his talent, you look at his production, now getting over here to the Power 2 in the Big Ten at Oregon, and then you look at Noah Whittington. I mean, he's just an experienced back that's been through it all, and now he's fully healthy, right? And then you look at guys like a Jade Lamar coming back with the long speed that he has, with Dink Riggs, who's also got some pop in his step. As well. This is just a group that I think is going to be really good. I'm really confident that a lot of these guys are going to get in the fold this season. I'm really confident that this is going to be a fantastic rushing attack, and it's going to be a rushing attack that Dante in this past game, with a lot of newness, right, in terms of that they're going to be able to lean on, that they're going to be able to rely on, so not all of the pressure is built on them to be able to kind of go down the field. And then, like, this is a big offensive line. Like, Poncho coming back in the middle as that anchor at center. Emmanuel Pranon is a big boy. Like, Alex Harkey over at right tackle might be a better run blocker than he is a pass blocker. Okay, like, this offensive line, just the sheer size, I think they're going to be able to move some big bodies up front, which are going to be able to open some run lanes as well. So very confident in what this rushing attack can be this season. And then I'm going to focus on a singular player. You know, I talked about confidence as the main central theme regarding the Ducks coming out of media days. I think another big takeaway that I had, and I mentioned this in my radio segment on 750 The Game last week, is it's Kenyon Sadiq. Kenyon Sadiq, I mean, everybody was talking about Kenyon. If there was maybe a singular player that was talked about maybe more than others, it might have been Kenyon Sadiq. Like, I think like this is a group, this is a team that is extremely confident in his unique unicorn-like ability. Like, the thing about this is a player like this comes around once every so often. Okay, Brock Bowers is maybe the more recent comparison of what that type of player can truly be. I think he's going to help out Dante Moore a ton. We know the tight end can be a quarterback's best friend, but Kenyon can just do it all. I've raved about Kenyon Sadiq on the show before. I will continue to rave about Kenyon Sadiq, and I kind of watch him talk. I watched him talk and represent the Ducks at Big Ten Media Days, and then I watched him in Eugene at the team media day. He just seems like such a well-grounded and a motivated young man. And I think that's what you want. And he's just a very well-spoken young man. It's just like, yeah, you love to see kind of how he's kind of approached the media and how he, some of his answers would be like, yeah, he's looking to take this thing to the next level, but because he's going to remain extremely motivated to have the best season that he possibly can. So there's a lot of things I think to be confident about. Are there some questions to be answered? Yes, absolutely. But media days in the books, a lot of confidence surrounding this Oregon program. There may be no better time to conclude our fall camp position previews than, well, when fall camp is set to begin in Eugene. It has been a lot of fun researching, doing some of these deep dives into these position rooms and really figuring out exactly what some of the battles are going to be during fall camp, during this next month. It's going to be a lot of fun to see how it plays out, and it has been a ton of fun really diving into it. So let's wrap up the defense, and let's talk about the inside linebacker position in Oregon's base 4-2-5. This is the Mac and the money in the middle of this Oregon defense. And this is a group that I think could have a really high ceiling for its starters this season. But, once you kind of get further on down the depth chart, there are some questions that need to be answered. Let's begin with what is departing from this Oregon inside linebacker room. Of course, you got to start with Jeffrey Bassa. He was the one that started next to Bryce Betcher for a majority of the time last season, an all Big Ten honorable mention, and a 5th-round draft pick of the Kansas City Chiefs. Justin Jacobs departs. He runs out of eligibility. It's interesting with Justin. He came in with a decent amount of fanfare. Former 4-star guy when he transferred over from Iowa. Injuries kind of held him back, and it didn't really pan out for him. And then Carter Soule as well runs out of eligibility for the Ducks. Now, they just brought in one addition. It is well documented that Oregon is not going into the transfer portal at the inside linebacker position. Their one addition, I know you could probably say Nasir Wyatt, but it seems like that he's going to be more of an edge type of guy going forward. But Gavin Nix, a 4-star linebacker out of IMG Academy in Florida, is the one addition to this group. There is a lot of faith from Dan Lanning and Brian Michalowski being put on the guys that are in this room that they can develop and that they can really rise to the occasion, certainly this season. When we talk about storylines centering the inside linebacker group here as we get into fall camp, it's the first one you got to talk about is Bryce Betcher. And he is all in on football this season. Of course, he is a dual sport star, a draft pick of the Houston Astros organization. And, he kind of talked about this a little bit during the spring period of how he's kind of approaching his training a little bit differently, focusing solely on football. He's been able to put 10 pounds on his frame, sitting there around that 230 to 235 type of mark. Bryce out there on center field, after the season, the football season usually ends. That's when you got to kind of start to get in shape for baseball. Got to be a little bit nimble out there in center field. And look, it could be baseball, it could be basketball, it could be hockey, lacrosse, it could be all of these other sports that anybody really plays. I understand there's no hockey at the University of Oregon, but you get the general idea. Is a lot of different sports require you to kind of be in a different type of shape. So for Bryce to be able to focus since January, getting ready for spring ball, specifically tailoring his training towards football, and then now from spring going into fall camp being just all in on the game of football, I'm just very curious to see how big a dividend that's going to pay off this season, right? Because kind of having to duel back and forth and maybe having your focus split a little bit, have we seen the ceiling of Bryce Betcher? Or with him now hyper-focused and dialed in on football this season, is that going to allow him to go to a different level, or has that peak already been reached? Now, it's a pretty good peak if that's indeed what it is. Second team All Big Ten last year, 94 tackles. He led the team in tackles last year. PFF is grading him as the top returning linebacker in the Big Ten. I believe that he can be certainly a first-team All-Big Ten player this year. I think he can be an All-American at that linebacker type of position. And we'll kind of get into it as we go through this thing. Like, him coming back in this group was huge. It was huge for him to be able to have one more year of eligibility to be able to finish this thing out. Otherwise, Oregon may have had to go into the transfer portal at this position as well. He is the heartbeat of this team. South Eugene kid, Duck fan through and through, and he's been saying in the spring, he said it at media days recently, he's been adamant on what his focus is coming back. I mean, he wants to achieve the ultimate goal. And he's just, man, that guy, he puts on the eye black. He's got that the collar. I mean, he just looks like an old school Big Ten linebacker, and he's going to be that leader. He's gonna be that vocal voice of this defense, knowing his whole childhood, right? Going to Duck games and being as big of a fan as he has for a long period of time. These are the stories that you love to hear. And with this 105 roster limit, I don't know how many more of these stories that we are going to see, but Bryce Betcher certainly wants to end it on a great note. He is no doubt going to be the leader of this group. Second point, is Devin Jackson ready to rise to the occasion? Now, before I kind of get into his skill sets and his talents and all of that, Devin Jackson was held out of spring ball due to an undisclosed injury. And then it sounds like he's going to be held at the very least maybe like the first week or so of fall camp, but he's still running over 20 miles an hour. So it sounds like it's good. It does not sound like this is going to be a lingering thing that's going to last kind of through the season. But the health of Devin Jackson, I think, is going to open more opportunities for some of these other guys in fall camp to be able to show certainly what they can do. Devin Jackson had 47 tackles last season. That was 6th on the team. It's the 3rd highest of the returning guys, behind only Bryce Betcher and Tatum Tuioti. He played in all 14 games last year, made 1 start. He's all very similar to like Amari Washington. Okay, last year on the defensive line, it was Harmon and it was Caldwell up front, and Amari Washington played in every game. He was in that rotation. He was always the next guy. Behind Jeffrey Bassa and Bryce Betcher, that's exactly what Devin Jackson was. And he is just like, considering how big he is, and then when you factor in his athleticism, he is just an absolute freak, right? He might be faster pound for pound than anybody on this team. Like, he is extremely fast, running sideline to sideline. I think he's got all of the physical tools to be an all Big Ten linebacker. I really do. It's up to Devin to be able to put this thing together. And I think Jackson needs to put it together, because if he doesn't, then you're starting to rely on some of this younger, a lot more unproven depth that we talk about right now. And let's get in to that depth that exists within this linebacker room right now. Now, I should trust this depth because the coaching staff trusts the depth. After the spring game, Dan Lanning said, we are not going into the portal to get a linebacker. Brian Michalowski says, I wouldn't be doing my job, of development if we just needed to go into the portal and be able to grab somebody like that. So that really portrays a lot of confidence in what they have in this room. And I think they do have some good to really good players, certainly in this room. I think a guy, when you start talking about the depth, that's often overlooked, because you talk about Bryce Betcher, you talk about Evan Jackson at the top, and then you kind of start to throw in some of these freshmen, these redshirt freshmen that I'll get into a little bit, that a lot of people are also really excited about in recent recruiting classes. But like Jerry Mixon was a 3-star prospect when he came out, but I watch him during the spring game and he's making really good plays. Jerry Mixon is a junior in this group, and like, he's got experience. He knows what a Tosh Lapoy defense is certainly all about. It would not surprise me to see, at the very least, Jerry maybe be in that Devin Jackson role last year, where he's that guy that's always the next guy in the rotation. And maybe if Devin is out a little bit longer, maybe that gives Jerry Mixon a little bit more of an opportunity to run with the ones besides Bryce Betcher in fall camp and really prove exactly what he can do as well. And then you kind of get down, like, I'm really excited about Braden Platt. I think Braden Platt showed some good things in the spring game as well. Platt is a redshirt freshman, a former 4-star recruit. He was actually the number 53 overall player according to 24/7 when he came out in the 24 cycle. I mean, 6'2", 235, like, that frame screams inside linebacker. So, like, he's like, out of all of these redshirt freshmen, he's probably the one that I expect to be like in the rotation the most out of all these guys. But certainly don't sleep on Devin Williams. Certainly don't sleep on Kamar Mathuti as well. Each of them only played in 1 game, though, last season. And I mentioned Gavin Nix certainly already. I think that this is a group that, if they're all playing kind of towards their ceiling, then I think that this is a really deep group. Where's my kind of thoughts on the rotation as it sits right now? I certainly think Devin Jackson and Bryce Betcher are going to establish themselves as the starting Mac and the starting money. I think like the significant rotation I think it gets to Jerry Mixon. I think it gets to Braden Platt. And then I think it maybe teeters on how much exactly we're going to see Dylan Williams, how much we're going to see Kamar Mathuti. That I'm a little bit less certain on, but I think that there could certainly be some good players that could certainly step up at the inside linebacker position for the Ducks this season. Let's move on to the offensive side of the football, and there are a lot of names here. This is the offensive line. Now, a little bit of a disclaimer for those of you watching on YouTube. There are some names spelled wrong. There are some guys where their grade and their class is not accurate, but that's what you get when you rush and you try to beat the power outage through severe thunderstorms. So bear with me certainly on that. Now, there are a lot of names. I am not going to list certainly all of them off. Otherwise, we might be sitting here for a while. But I've got 20 names in this offensive line group. The standard is the standard for the Ducks up front on the offensive line. Back-to-back years as a Joe Moore Award finalist. It's like the quarterback. You know, you just had back-to-back years as a Heisman finalist. All we're expecting from you is to be one of the best in the country. That's what we've come to expect the last couple of years, and now I think that's what's expected of this Oregon offensive line, but you're replacing 4 starters up front on the O-line. The only guy that's coming back is the center, Iapani Lalaolu. So can this group, with all of this newness up front, especially out of the transfer portal, more on that in just a minute, continue to live up to that standard? I believe that they can at their highest point. But as we learned from last year, it's all about gelling. It's all about gelling together, especially early in the season, to be able to reach that point. But last year, it didn't look so great in the first couple of games, and they still ended up at that level. What is being lost out of this offensive line room? Maybe just one of the best offensive linemen in Oregon history. Josh Connerly, a first-team All-American, first-team All-Big Ten. Oh, and another first-round draft pick, 29th overall to the Washington Commanders. Now he's the main protector for Jaden Daniels in Washington. Ajani Cornelius, the other tackle last year, he's gone. He was a third-team All-Big Ten player, and he was a sixth-round draft pick of the Dallas Cowboys. Marcus Harper, by the way, he's over there writing some content for Ducks Rising, so excited to see Marcus contributing over there. Nishad Strother is out of this room. George Silva, very highly regarded junior college kid that came in, didn't work out for him. He's out. Jaquan McRoy, he transferred out to Arkansas as well. Now we get into some of these significant additions for this Ducks offensive line. And when we talk about significant, we talk about significant with their skill set, and maybe their ranking according to some of these transfer portal sites on 3 or 24/7. And then we talk about significant when we just talk about the size. These are some big old boys. Okay, Isaiah World from Nevada, Emmanuel Pranon from USC, Alex Harkey from Texas State, and then they are bringing in 4 true freshmen as well. This is an entirely new starting group. Okay, the only returner, as I said before, is Poncho. Now, if there's one position that I'm like, okay, if you want to return one position where I want a guy that's just almost written in stone, I think center is the type of guy that I want. That's the leader of the offensive line. And a leader is exactly what Iapani Lalaolu has been during spring ball and now as we approach fall camp. He was noted during the spring by Will Stein as one of the vocal leaders, the vocal leader, I think at the time he said, as this offense right now. So that's exactly what you want. You want a guy like that. He's been in this program for a couple of years. He kind of hit the ground running. And of course, last year he made, after those first couple of games, they moved him over the center, and all was certainly hunky-dory after that. It was a lot of good news after they kind of figured some things out there. He started the first 2 games of the year at right guard a season ago. Now, the Ducks had to go to the transfer portal. They had to, because, and this kind of plays into some of the depth conversation that I'm going to be talking about here in just a minute, because they did not have guys ready. They did not have guys waiting in the wings. I think that kind of has to do with some of the misses that they've had in recruiting, maybe before Alik Terry took over full-time as the offensive line coach. So they're kind of paying the price now where they got to go into the portal and to be able to get those guys. Let's talk about some of these portal additions. Isaiah World, he's as big as the world, by the way, coming over from Nevada. The number 5 overall player in the transfer portal, and hey, the number 1 offensive tackle. That'll do. That'll do, certainly. Now, he was an All-Mountain West honorable mention. For as much hype and praise as he's getting, people are talking top 10 pick, top 15 pick, maybe in next year's NFL draft. I mean, that's kind of what he was last year. But I think, like, with better coaching, I think that he's going to be able to really stack up well. 6'8", 315 pounds. I've kind of listened to former Duck offensive lineman Jeff Schwartz talk about him a lot, and he just raves about him. And obviously Jeff does some stuff covering the NFL as well, so he kind of dabbles in both a little bit, and he raves about Isaiah World and exactly what he can be. Big shoes to fill with Josh Connerly, but people are already talking about him maybe being drafted higher than Josh Connerly. Like, if he's playing at that type of level, Dante Moore's going to love that. If you can keep Dante Moore clean with a guy like World out there, that's going to make your offense a whole lot better. That's why I believe Isaiah World, an extremely important piece to the success of the offense this season. Emmanuel Pranon from USC, he was a second-team All-Big Ten guy last year with the Trojans. I think he was USC's best offensive lineman last season. The number 27 overall player in the portal, did not allow a sack at all last year. Now, he's really good in pass protection, certainly especially for a guard, but I think he was also a really big part of USC having their first 1,000-yard rusher since 2017. Woody Marks, of course, rushed for that in 2024 this last season. 6'5", 320 pounds. Like, I'm gonna talk about these guys' height. I'm gonna talk about these guys' weight because they are like. And I talked about it, the defense, like the measurables are just like, that's a Big Ten defensive line. These are like huge. This is a Big Ten offensive line. Like, it's just the size. Alik Terry raved about the size of some of these transfers during the spring, and they're going to be able to contend. They're going to be able to push some people around because of the experience that these guys have, and certainly because of the size compared to maybe some of the other defensive lines that they'll be going up against. Alex Harkey transfers over from Texas State. He was third-team All-Sun Belt last season. How about 6'6", 335 pounds? Now, the interesting thing about him over at tackle is he might be a better run blocker than he is a pass blocker out there. I've heard that from people that I trust. And then I also kind of watch the spring game, and I see the same stuff. So maybe he needs to step it up a little bit in terms of pass blocking on that side. But certainly if you're going to pick one side where you need to be better, you're going to pick left. Certainly over right. I think there's a small possibility that, like, he could possibly move into guard because of his prowess at run blocking. But I think that would signal like Janoris Wilson has taken a gigantic step up forward, and you can trust him at right tackle. But personally, I think the entirety of the offensive line will be better if Harkey is over at tackle, and then one of these two that I'm about to talk about is at right guard. And that's going to be the big position battle, I think, on this offensive line during fall camp is going to be at right guard. I look like that's the thing about last year. There were so many moving pieces, but I kind of look at it this year and I'm like, okay, World's going to be your left tackle. Pranon's going to be your left guard. Poncho's going to be your center. Like, that is as close to written in stone, pending injury, that I think that you can get. Okay, and then maybe as I mentioned before, the right side is going to have some questions. At right guard, Matthew Bedford at 6'6", 310, and Dave Iuli are going to be the guys that are likely going to be in this battle. Bedford transferred over from Indiana before last season. It was his injury and his lingering injury, and he was out for the whole year. It was that really kind of created the problems of the musical chairs last year on Oregon's offensive line. Bedford started 11 games at IU in 2023, allowed just 1 sack. So once again, there's some great interior pass protection from one of the guards on this team, if he indeed is the guy. But Iuli is like, he filled in for Marcus Harper, I believe, due to injury late in the year last year, and I thought he was actually better. I thought that he was better than Marcus Harper. He started 4 games at right guard, and I thought he was very serviceable, certainly filling in right now. So very intrigued to see who's kind of running with the ones. I maybe lean Bedford as of right now. But Iuli, I think, is going to be one of like the top second-team guys, if he indeed is that way, where he can be the backup at left guard, he can be the backup at right guard, maybe center, any of these interior guys. If they go down, Iuli is maybe somebody that could plug into that rotation as well. Now, I want to talk about the depth, because once you get past the starting group, there's a pretty sizable fall off. Like I kind of mentioned, how confident I am in a lot of these guys. And I think like once they kind of blend it together, get a couple of games under their belt, and they kind of feel it out a little bit, because when it comes to offensive line, it's much more, that's a group where maybe more than any position group on the field where you need to play as one instead of playing as 5 individual parts. You're a complete unit. And I think that's how you judge an offensive line instead of judging a tackle, a guard, and a center individually. But once you get past that, it's I don't feel fantastic about the depth, but there are young guys on this roster that need to prove, and not necessarily that they can contend for a spot this year, because I think, you got a pretty good starting point with that starting 5 up front for the Ducks, but you need to prove that Oregon doesn't have to go into the portal again next season. Like, there's some young players that have to prove that they've been able to develop over this season, so when they get to next season, they can plug into that starting lineup, and the Ducks can feel confident that they can play at that standard as a Joe Moore Award finalist. Do you see younger guys like freshman Zaire Addison? I really like Doug Utu. Zach Staskowski, he's going to join the team, I think, this summer here headed into fall camp. He did not join the team in the spring. I mean, are they going to start to challenge guys like Charlie Pickard? I mean, Charlie Pickard last year started 2 games at center and then didn't see a whole lot of time after that. Okay, they subbed him out, they put in Poncho, and everything got better. What about Kawika Rogers? Kawika Rogers is a redshirt junior, right? He's played in every game the last 2 seasons. Okay, but where is he going to be as we maybe look towards who's going to be able to be in a spot where they can be a solid second-team guy and thus set themselves up for an opportunity to be a first-team guy when you get to be able to get to next season as well. So I think those are the biggest points when you talk about the big boys up front on the offensive line. I think that this is going to be a really good group when all is said and done, and we're talking about this Ducks team and how they looked in January. Great edition of TSOW is in the books. 2 power outages, be damned. We will overcome it and provide the electricity here on that show out west. Going to try to get a Friday show up for you as well, so make sure you keep an eye out for that. But until next time, I'm Ted LaRue. This has been That Show Out West.